Bonjour à tous, je suis ravi de vous retrouver pour un nouvel entretien mortel. Ces entretiens qui réunissent des chercheurs, des universitaires, des médecins, des pharmaciens, mais aussi des citoyens comme les autres, des patients parfois, des gens qui sont très pour l'euthanasie et le suicide assisté, des gens qui sont très contre, puis des gens qui sont dans la nuance entre les deux et qui essayent de comprendre les enjeux. C'est notre cas aujourd'hui, on va essayer de mettre à nouveau frais la question d'une sorte de thanato-anthropologie, la mort comme un fait social central qui vient nous dire beaucoup de choses de notre société actuelle et nous aider à mieux la comprendre. Dans le contexte de la proposition de loi Falorni, qui est, comme vous le savez peut-être pour un certain nombre d'entre vous, a été votée au Parlement français sur l'aide active à mourir, c'est-à-dire le suicide assisté et l'euthanasie. Est-ce que c'est un progrès pour notre société très attendu par l'ensemble de la société ou est-ce que c'est les symptômes d'une maladie collective vis-à-vis de la mort? On va essayer d'explorer ces enjeux ensemble et aujourd'hui j'ai l'honneur de recevoir quelqu'un que ça touche au premier chef directement, qui est Roger Foley. Bonjour Roger. Hello Roger. Really nice to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in. Bonjour and hello to you, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you very much to be here today and to take of your time and your energy. Can you introduce yourself for the people who wouldn't know you in France?
Sure. For those in France, I'm a Canadian. I live in London, Ontario, Canada. I'm 49 years old. I was born with a rare neurodegenerative disease called spino-cérébelleuse ataxia type 14. The genetic ataxias are neurological disorders. The type I have, my cerebellum, the white matter vanishes and it atrophies, and it affects not only my central nervous system, but there's a DNA deficiency in the code that I was born with, so my body can't process energy very well, and my central nervous system is compromised. Furthermore, I was born with a deformed cervical spine with malformed vertebrae, partial fused vertebrae, degenerative disc disease, and malformed disc. So I have a lot of neuropathy, and in addition to the spinocerebellar ataxia affecting my movement, I also have shooting nerve pain and pain in my neck, severe migraines, and severe light sensitivity, and also my organs don't function as well because my central nervous system is compromised. But I keep on going. I stay positive. It was hard early on in my life when the disease really started to deteriorate. But what I found is you can come to terms with the disabilities and health challenges you have, and you can still accomplish dreams and goals both for yourself and others in the community. Um, you might have to do it different than you thought you would have, but life is still worth it, and it's important to accept the health challenges and disabilities and realize that life is precious.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I had a little problem with my internet. Can you hear me well?
Oh yeah, I could hear you.
Good.
Did I
Yes.
cut out or anything?
Oh, it cut down a little bit on my side, but I will cut it. I will stitch it and cut it after. So
Oh, okay.
I'm just rephrase so that you can start speech again. I kind of understand that you have this neurological evolutionary disease, which is kind of a rare orphan disease, which is particularly having symptoms about fatigability and muscular activity, but also pain and difficulties with seeing in some certain light ambience, and that you have a big experience of the medical world, and that for most of your life it happened all right to have medicalization in your everyday life, and that for you life is worth living it, and no question about that.
Yeah, and when the disease really started to deteriorate, that's when I became more dependent on the medical system. And so I began having to have home care. And in Canada, the home care is very rigid. In France, I understand you have the right to compensation for persons with disabilities to be funded directly to choose caregivers of their own choice. Um, I studied a bit of the history of the home care in your country, and it was Jacques Chirac. Sorry if I pronounced his name wrong, but I think he passed legislation in the early 2000s. But in Canada, we don't have that. In Canada, we have a very fractured medical system, and the federal government hides behind so-called provincial jurisdiction, even though healthcare is congruent and the federal government has the national concerns branch where they can intervene with their spending powers. But for the most part, that doesn't happen, and the provinces have their own kind of systems, and one province might have better home care than the other. One might have direct funding in the other province, but not Ontario. And in Ontario specifically, there's a monopolization of contracted agencies. So it's uh, the province delegates its responsibility to the healthcare authority, and the healthcare authority picks a few chosen agencies to monopolize the system. And persons with disabilities become property of these agencies essentially. We don't have any choice. We don't have any choice to choose the agency of our own choice. We don't have the choice to choose the workers of our own choice. So it's a very rigid system, and there's high turnover because the workers on their end, they're treated very poorly, where they're thrown around to inconsistent clients. They don't really know who they're going to have for the most part. If they do, they're having multiple people per day, but they don't see those people again for like a week or so. So there's no consistency for the patients nor for the workers. And what that creates is a booking is kind of like a Groundhog Day, where the person with disabilities has to re-explain their whole life story and their whole health, their whole routine, and the worker stumbles through it, and needs are rarely fully met. In my case, I'm complex needs, and I have a lot of hours of care per day, and I was getting upwards to 5 different care workers in my home per day inconsistently. So a lot of injuries would happen to me, a lot of incidents with cross contamination, um, and like the quality of workers sometimes would be really low. You'd get people just doing the job because they don't particularly want to be in the healthcare industry. They just do it for the money, and they end up doing things like falling asleep in your apartment during a booking, or hurting you during physiotherapy because they get distracted because they're looking around at your possessions in the home, or rushing through the booking where they bash you into walls handling the hard left carelessly. So with me, it was years of really uncompassionate and quite frankly reckless home care workers in my home, where I would end up in the hospital a lot. Then I would be discharged back to the same agencies they'd promised to do better, but they never kept the promises. So eventually, psychologically, that really wore on me, and I became suicidal because there was no way out of this cruel loop. Um, and so I had a very good social worker, and one day I just happened to open up to her that I had a plan, and she was very concerned, and she called my family doctor, and next thing you know, I'm admitted for mental health this time in the hospital. I was there for about a month, and then the agency said they were going to repair things. I get discharged back out. Um, they didn't. They just did the same things, and I ended up back in the hospital. And the hospital care team was upset at the agency. Specifically, my physician at the time was really upset at the agency for breaking all the agreements and breaking all the words. So then I was admitted to the hospital, and I've been here ever since. And it's been really hard because the monopoly of the agency still exists and there's no accountability. So I really have no way to get home because the agencies that kept putting me in the hospital are not safe to return to. Self directed funding for home care in Ontario is very restricted unfairly. And then in all of this, the hospital started suggesting euthanasia to me, and that really affected me psychologically as well. I have a lot of PTSD, a lot of trauma from not only them offering me euthanasia over and over again, but also the psychological coercion and abuse that I've been through, including my current circumstances where the lighting accommodations that I needed for my eyes were yanked away, and now I have difficulty in accessing food, meds, and water. And I'm forced to be on an IV, and everyone just ignores my eyesight disabilities, and I am advocating the best I can, and then I'm also advocating to get the self-directed home care that I need. So um, I've been on the front lines of the healthcare industry and the euthanasia regime in Canada, and it's not pleasant in any way. It's not compassionate. It's a very, quite frankly, very cold and cruel. And in Canada, you see the euthanasia regime sliding and expanding at a rapid pace, and many abuses happening, and they're not being paid attention to. And the healthcare industry, what's happened since the legalization of euthanasia and assisted suicide in Canada is there's no incentive anymore to improve or to innovate. Um, for instance, cancer patients in Canada, there's such a long waiting list. And there was one physician who was being interviewed on a CBC radio show. I think it's called White Coat Black Art. And he was saying how it's easier to get euthanasia in Canada than an MRI for a cancer diagnosis. And there's patients that he's had that have been waiting for treatment and they can't get it. And then all of a sudden they opt for medical assistance in dying. So that's a bit of what France could expect if you legalize, where all of a sudden the incentive for the most vulnerable and disabled, and just for disease and conditions in general, the incentive will go away to improve and innovate and find cures and new treatments. It will create this new rigid kind of status quo where we don't have to innovate or do anything, because if somebody's suffering, well, they can just be euthanized. Um, so the experience is very cold and cruel in Canada.
I understand that there's already a kind of a problem with the home care in Canada, where there's depending on the different state, but in Ontario you have a kind of a monopoly over this kind of care, where the companies doing it are always changing the person coming, and that you have to do it all over again every day, or each time they change, they don't have the patience and the formation to do it correctly, and there's no innovation at all. And that there was the kind of a usual banality of evil, of cruelty and badness, but no innovation and no try to do it better. The euthanasia or assisted suicide kind of happened as a unique solution to in the head of the people in charge, to simplify everything. No problem anymore. We're gonna ask people to die. It's gonna be easier than to try and find some complex care, right? Am I right understanding that?
Correct. Yeah, and also it's very flippant, where even the Attorney General of Canada on their Twitter or X account is making tweets about how beautiful it is. Like I can send you uh, the uh, the documents of it, but on Twitter, the Attorney General a few years ago was uh, posting graphic commercials about Maid being compassionate and dignified and covered by the healthcare system. And then you have one clothing company in Quebec named Simons. I'm not sure if you know them, but they released a commercial called All is Beauty. And what it was a disabled woman who was getting euthanasia. And they made this commercial to make it all glamorous. And then after she had the euthanasia, and the commercial came out and it wasn't well received, it got international backlash. But then it was uncovered through investigating reporting that the woman, Jennifer Hatch, in the commercial, who received the euthanasia, she didn't want to die. She was trying to get the supports to live. And she actually had reached out to the media about 6 months prior and was featured on CTV News as anonymous with her face fogged out, uh, begging for supports to live. And um, so even when persons with disabilities or vulnerable persons reach out, we're met with silence. And when we do end up casualties, um, it's uncovered more so outside of our country, but inside our country, there's not much awareness of it, and the media certainly doesn't want to pay attention to it, at least the mainstream media. Uh, but there's also physicians like Dr. Stephanie Green. She releases commercials about medical assistance in dying They're kind of like infomercials. I can send you them. She still has it up on the uh, CAMAP, which is a Canadian assessor for me provider YouTube page. But it's very dystopian, and it's only getting worse because right now, um, the Canadian government is really going full steam ahead with expanding euthanasia now to mental illness as a sole condition, to mature minors, um, even to newborns that they don't think the baby's life is worth living. So it's really spiraled out of control. And we see this in other jurisdictions in the world too. It's just Canada has done it so fast that, um, and we've done it so recklessly that uh, it's well known throughout, at least internationally, uh, what's been happening. And that's only the tip of the iceberg of what's happening in Canada.
I understand that there's this whole glamorous propaganda about euthanasia, trying to convince people that it's the right way to live their dignity till the end and express their freedom and so on, with all the bullshit we could say. But there's a reckless economic consideration for getting rid of the people who are not like the norm, like the usual attended performative ideal of our society. And so behind this glamorous propaganda, there is a smelly eugenics intention that we already knew before in the history, and that we already know the result of it. So you told us about several cases that you are following and that you're in touch with, but as far as you are concerned, was the question expressed directly to you by the doctors or by the administration, between keep on with the care that you have, or it would be better to have euthanasia?
It was both very forward and very sneaky. So in the hospital early on, there was a very difficult time for me to access food because I have difficulty swallowing and I need to consume pureed foods. I also have allergies as well. So they also were putting pressure on me to affect me psychologically and try to harm me so that I would give up. So one day I was being uh, starved with no access to food, and I was begging for food. Um, and it was such an easy solution to gain, and it was so easy to gain that a couple years later, the hospital said, "Oh, we could do that, no problem." But back then, they were trying to put pressure on me. So I escalated up to the floor coordinator, and I told her, like, when you do things like this to me, when you berate me, when you starve me, when you treat me inhumanely, it makes me very suicidal. And she just looked at me with a cold stare and said, the hospital has a program to help you if you wanted to end your life. And that that shocked me. It also triggered me, and um, so all I could see then was um, the only way to get out of my situation was to go through with what they were suggesting, which was assistance in dying. So I actually applied for it. I wrote a written request, and I fell for all this propaganda and jargon, all dignity, and it's a way to go and not suffer anymore. And like all I could think was escaping the abusive situation I was in. I couldn't think of anything else because I was also so isolated. So I actually had the appointment booked in motion in August, early August of 2017. And when you actually have an appointment for me, like I just started thinking about it more often. And if it wasn't for family members and also some of the advocacy that I was doing to get the home care that I need, which I had partly given up on because of the bureaucracy. All of a sudden in August, I was like, I felt really conned um, because I all of a sudden came to my senses that they were just trying to get rid of me, and that my life was still of value, and the light at the end of the tunnel wasn't to be euthanized. It was to get the home care that I need to be able to live in the community again. So then I expressed that I wanted to cancel this, and I wanted to escalate my home care advocacy to the Health Services Review Board, and I made it known to the hospital. That created a backlash. Instead of the hospital supporting me in escalating to the board for the direct funding home care, instead, behind the scenes, me not knowing, they were applying a forced discharge, and they did so with the site chief because my doctor at the time wouldn't agree with it. She didn't agree with the agencies, and I never was able to fully talk to her about what happened behind the scenes, but she withdrew from it, whatever they were doing, and I have the access to the internal emails, and they were working out with the site chief of the unit, so a doctor above my doctor, basically. Um, and their plan was to come at me, threaten, charge me with a forced discharge, and then throw euthanasia in the mix. And that's what they did. One day, it was September 1st or early September. I think it was September 1st. I'm a little bit fatigued now, so on dates I may um, be off a bit, but I get like the director of mental health and the ethicist, and then they just gang up on me, and then I'm just asking like, well, what's this plan that you have for me? Like I don't know any of it, and then the ethicist just chimes in and says he just came by to see if I was interested in assisted dying. And they know that they're putting me under duress. They know they're making me panic and suicidal. And that was their plan, to coerce me into an outcome that they wanted. Um, and they threw assisted dying in there because I don't know I don't know their mindset, but um, and it wasn't the first time and last time they did that. Um, a couple months later, again, I get a nurse coming in my room, and the appointment that I tried to cancel for the assessment was still active, and I'm in shock. And I told him I canceled that. Like, I'm not interested in euthanasia. I'm trying to get the home care I need. I'm focusing on that. Please finally cancel this. And like he did know if he could right away, and they had to check, and I was just really confused because I was like, I'm the patient, shouldn't I be able to cancel it like right away? Um, and so I never got clarity. And um, like a few days later, I had to phone around to all these places to make sure it was canceled, and it finally was. But then, like a number of months later, I have the flu, and I'm on the IV. I'm not doing well, and one of the nurses who typically serves as a charge nurse comes by to do a so-called safety check and asked me if I had thoughts of ending my life. And I said, like, of course I do because of the situation I'm in. But if I had self-directed funding home care, I'd be fine. And then out of nowhere, he just puts out, uh, well, if you don't get the home care you need, you can just apply for an assisted. Um, so, like, at that point, I was just approached someone transferred. I just told him, like, why do I have to die? Like, just because the home care I need is being blocked. And he like started going in a spiel, and then he started berating me for being in the hospital so long. So they do that. They nudge and they coerce and they hint and they pressure, and it just gets out of control. And another thing that was happening at the time was the press. There was an article that came out about a woman with a cerebellar ataxia that was approved for euthanasia, and she was deemed reasonably foreseeable, which was a criteria at the time. So all these romantic stories in the press of, oh, this person received euthanasia, they qualify, they have MS or Parkinson's or cerebellar ataxia or post polio. All of a sudden, everyone who wants to live becomes a target, more or less, because now the press has sort of put a target on our back where people look at us and are like, well, in the press, people with spinocerebellar ataxia are qualifying for euthanasia. So, Roger, maybe you should think of it as an option, and then they pitch it. Um, so it's a real mess. It's not something that can be controlled because of human nature. Um, Human beings were not mature enough to have such a regime anywhere in the world. Um, and it's only gotten worse in Canada with it. So,
Yeah. And tell me if I understand well, but I think hearing you that it changed the law about euthanasia and assisted suicide and medical assistance to death kind of changed the relationship between the patient, you or another patient, and the healthcare system and the healthcare providers. Normally, they should kind of build and create a way of dealing with the disease or healing hand in hand and trying to cooperate together to try and find the best for the patient. But now they transformed in kind of vulture turning around you all the time. Each time you have flu, each time you feel bad, each time you feel a little bit awkward by something passing on like a infectious disease or thing like that, you feel like a nudge trying to push you to death. Do I understand it right? And
yeah,
so the
you're
relationship
correct.
changed.
The messaging before euthanasia in Canada, um, it was more centered on not giving up and overcoming barriers. Like we have heroes like Terry Fox in our country, and Michael J. Fox is Canadian too, even though he's more in the U.S. But the will to live and the will to learn to live with disabilities and diseases and strive for medical um, innovations for cures and treatments and supports that has disappeared in Canada, where now it's a message of just giving up. Like there's many media stories where people who, for instance, in cancer, they're in stage one and they could get chemo and they're survivable, but they decide to give up because the messaging is to end the suffering. And one euthanasia provider in Canada, Dr. Madeline Lee of the Toronto University Health Network, there was a number of times where she confessed in committee that she provided euthanasia against her better judgment because the Canadian law wouldn't protect the individual. And then she did a feature article for a publication where she admitted that one of the early cancer patients that she provided euthanasia to had a very good chance of survival, and that weighed on her mind that she provided that patient with euthanasia when he probably would have survived. So the doctors, a lot of them are very conflicted. Um, there's maybe maybe a handful, like in every system, that are very nonchalant about patient care, but there are uh, physicians that are really trying to do good, but they're confused because the laws in Canada don't really protect. There's not a lot of supports, and then they're uh, they feel a nudge to go forward with something that that is against their better conscience. Um, but that's the system. It's now geared towards giving up and dying with dignity and ending suffering instead of addressing the suffering and confronting the illnesses and disabilities and not giving up. Yeah.
Do, do you know what gives you the strength to keep on and to get back in the in track each time you are proposed to give up or you are nudged to give up? Is there something in your family that is influencing you? Is there something with your personal history, or do you know where's or do you have a network of patient and helpers? What gives you the strength to keep on and this little spark of life still going on?
Well, for, sorry, my phone is going off. I'm just trying to shut it off. Maybe you could edit this part off. Um, sorry.
I can see you trying to do something with your phone. Yeah. I
Oh,
do you have to answer?
uh, oh, they just stopped.
Okay.
It's my patient phone. Sorry about that. I don't know who called, but I'm sorry I missed your call. um, I'm sorry. Maybe you could edit that part out
Okay.
when you do the um. Sorry, just the phone was too loud for me. but I'm okay if you could repeat the question.
Yeah, my question was what gives you the spark of life that helps you confronting and facing this nudge, this medical and administrative nudge to guiding you to death, and what prevents you from that? Do you have a personal energy somewhere? Do you have a family history helping you, or do you have a network of resistance that has been set up with time?
I just have a passion to live, and I always been a positive person in my life, where I was always responsible, and I took on the big challenges in my life, and I wasn't afraid to move forward, or um, and a lot of that perseverance that I have, I feel came from my father, who was a World War II frontline war veteran. He served in the Saskatchewan Regiment in World War II, the beaches of Normandy. He also served in France, Belgium, Holland, behind the enemy lines in Germany, and that's where he ultimately was wounded so severely that um, they sent him back home on leave, but he still wanted to go back, and he signed up um, to go back to the front again. But the war then ended. Um, and for the soldiers of that war, a lot of them had a lot of PTSD, a lot of uh, physical and mental wounds. So my father, he struggled with the memories and the trauma of the front. Um, his fellow soldiers and his friends that fought beside him, almost all of them were killed. Um, and so he was a very positive person, and he had a lot that he was living with that he had to overcome. And he also eventually got cancer, which the doctors gave him 2 years to live. But what he did is he took the diagnosis as, what can I do to change my life, to extend my life? And he changed his diet, a number of other habits with his health, and he defied the diagnosis where he lived another 10 years. Um, and uh, he also, his kidneys failed, so he was on dialysis. He had to get dialysis a number of times a week, but he was always positive, and uh, he was always like innovative, and a very kind, loving man to everyone. Um, and for me, as his son, growing up and seeing that kind of perseverance and courage in the face of health challenges, and such such past trauma, like being in the front lines of the World War, uh, that it, it taught me what perseverance and courage was, and in my life, what I saw and experienced from my dad, who was my best friend, um, that ingrained into my personality and my, uh, I guess you could say, passion to live, and not to give up. And for me, my light at the end of the tunnel right now is getting the home care that I need, uh, to return back to the community, and be with my family again, uh, hang out with my brother. Again, I have a 5-year-old niece that I've never met. I would like to be a supportive uncle for her in the community. I'd like to see my mother who's still living again. My friends, I'd like to volunteer for charities again and help others that are in the same situation that I am. There's all these things I know that I could do to contribute to the community of my family and goals for myself as well. So that's what keeps me going, and we forget a lot of times as human beings how valuable we are and our self-worth. And I think that um, in our various countries, in cities, in societies, that we should put more focus on the value we have as human beings, um, and and cherish each other a bit more and celebrate the the great things that we can do together instead of going down a spiral, very dark road, and giving a message that we should give up on each other, we should give up on ourselves. So it's something in life you really have to discover who you are as a person and just be yourself and not give up and believe in yourself. And that's, I guess, something that I've been fortunate enough to discover, and hopefully the world, we can all support each other a bit better so that everyone can feel secure and safe.
Thank you much, Roger, for all this. I have several other questions, but maybe we come to an end of our interview progressively, and we can meet again another time. But the first question that come up to me this springs is there any way people who are listening to us can help you? And you are now in the hospital, kind of stuck in the hospital, as I understand
Yeah.
it, and was the you're eager to come back to your normal everyday life with your family and your fellow friends, and that you can meet. And no one would want to live in the hospital for years and so much time. Is there any means that the people can find to help you? And
Um, it's very difficult because the way the healthcare system is, they really isolate persons with disabilities. Um, I am still active in the courts and tribunals to try to um, access the supports I need to live. Um, so one of the ways that people could help is I need legal assistance for my court case and my tribunal case. They can visit a Give Send Go page. If they go to the URL helprogerfoley.com, it will redirect to the Give Send Go page. Also, uh, donations will also go towards establishing a home care trust for me. So right now in Ontario, in Canada, it's more of a federal thing where I can establish a home care trust. And with this home care trust, I can, with accessing funding, then I can be directly funded for home care from sources outside of Ontario because the trust structure allows for that. As for my situation now with the lighting, I'm engaged in the tribunal the Human Rights Tribunal, and it's difficult because I'm so isolated that but people can also reach out to me because I'm also trying to build a team to be able to return home, and every little bit of help is greatly appreciated. I'm just hoping that I'm able to survive and one day be back home. I'm sorry if I sound so grim. It's just the situation is very dire.
Yeah, thank you much for sharing all that and your testimony. That's also kind of a warning for the French people. See that they maybe should not open the Pandora box of euthanasia and assisted suicide and medical assistance to deaths. That the whole culture of healthcare is changing with that kind of law, and the most fragile people pay a huge tribute to that. And so seeing from a person who is all right, has no health problem, nothing, it could be alluring, but seeing from the point of view of a person who needs healthcare and don't want them to in any way to end his life because he's kind of nudged to or forced to. It's really a bad dead end. Would you agree, making kind of a conclusion for the French public and your vision of that kind of a law from your point of view, your personal point of view, and if you had any advice or any anything important to share with the French audience?
I would tell France not to legalize, to focus more on improving the healthcare system we have, improving palliative care, and other forms of respectful and dignified end-of-life care that is not euthanasia or suicide, because it's going to spin out of control and it's going to be used for what it's not was intended to be, and the incentive will and the innovation will be lost, and the attitude in your country will shift to being desensitized. And it's very important to focus on the healthcare system we have. And there are flaws, but that's what innovation and incentive is, to improve things and improve access to home care, to long-term care supports, to palliative care. Because if you don't do that, then the value of vulnerable person's life is going to be greatly diminished, and your country is going to be more focused on giving up rather than moving forward. And there's a lot of people who will end up casualties that would have lived for another 5 or 10 years with a happy life. And it would destroy the very fabric of humanity in your country, just like it has in Canada. So
thank you much, Roger Foley, for sharing all that and for your how can we say that, appetite for life that should wake up ours. A whole bunch of our society is kind of living like zombies and not hoping anything, not having any creativity with difficulty they face, and you kind of give us a lesson about that disease and difficulty should make us go forward and find more creativity and innovation to face it rather than giving up. And so you're on the front like your father, and that's an important testimony for us. Thank you much, Roger. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye.